And we're live, streaming to you from the footsteps of New York City. We are Music Matters with Jason Tramm, and we're delighted that you can join us for our unique podcast community, where we explore the issues and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. Thank you so much for helping us grow. We just hit 1,385 subscribers today. We're excited about that. Our goal is right now 2,500, so please remember to subscribe to us and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. And we have a wonderful variety of new guests coming up, and we have a library. This is our 142nd guest, and we're excited to see our library. You can go to our website at www.jasontram.net. And you can also see all of our upcoming guests. We have everyone from opera singers on the leading stages of the world to independent artists in the pop genres and everything in between. So thank you for joining us, and we're so excited. Today's guest is Amy Shoremount-Obra, one of the leading sopranos and someone I'm delighted to have met, and just an outstanding voice. She was she went to the Juilliard School of Music, and since then has sung many times at the Metropolitan Opera. She's won major awards such as the 2018 Goethe Listener Foundation International Vocal Competition in the Wagner division, and the voice has been growing, and she's been singing all over the world. We're so delighted that you can join us. Welcome, Amy.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's great to catch up. It's been many years, and it's been great to watch your success, and as your career has been exploding all over the place. I'm just so happy to see that.
Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to think about, I think the time that we worked together, I think was like 2010. It's been about a decade.
Where does that time go?
Flies.
It's crazy to think that long ago, but it's when you're doing what you love, the time goes quickly, and there's so many performances. And I'm just watching your growth, and I see you on social media, and it's just great to see.
Thank you.
So why don't we go back to the beginning of your journey? Did you always know you wanted to be a professional artist?
I think so, although not necessarily an opera singer. In fact, opera was probably my last choice on the list, only because I wasn't exposed to it at a young age at all. I actually started off as a pianist when I was 5, and I played the piano all the way through my first 2 years at Manhattan School of Music. I studied with a member of the piano faculty there. But when I was about age 8, there was an ad in the paper, as things happened back in the 80s, and looking for local kids to be in the theater. There was a professional children's theater group. So my parents sent me on the audition because I was very interested at that time. You know, I was very into the movie Annie, and I was always acting things out in the living room. So they were like, let's get this kid in theater. So I went to that audition and got in the chorus, and I started. My love of theater began then. My first show ever on stage was Babes in Toyland, and I was popped with the kettle on. I will never forget it. And a clown. I was a clown in some scene. I just remember having a clown suit. So and then I did theater there, and then I also did community theater, and I took acting classes, and I really loved Broadway and musical theater. I mean, that's really all I was exposed to, that and classical piano music. A lot of Beethoven. I still am like a huge Beethoven fan. And so I didn't see my first opera until I was 16, and it was Stravinsky's The Rake's Progress.
That's an interesting first choice. Wow.
Yeah, let's
Great
just
show.
say I didn't like it.
Take a few more years before you can appreciate that. Usually it's Bohème or, Tosca.
I didn't really have the appreciation for the neoclassical at age 16. And in any case, it was part of, I was a student that summer at the New Jersey Governor's School of the Arts, which is sadly no longer funded, but there were 12 students from the state of New Jersey who were chosen to spend a month at the College of New Jersey, where we had a little vocal ensemble, but we also worked on Mozart opera. We did a lot, and that's where my first exposure to actually like singing opera was with, we did the Cozy Trio, there's the Papageno, I duet all those fun favorites, the quintet from the Magic Flute, and then that same summer is when I saw The Rake's Progress, which I absolutely hated, and it actually kind of made me think, I don't know if I mean, I love the Mozart, but I don't want to do that. But I knew that I, wanted to sing, and I had a voice that was, at that time, it was very apparent, it was not really one that was cut out for musical theater. And I figured, well, I'll go to school and learn how to sing properly and see what happens. And so that's how I ended up at the music conservatory and studying voice.
It's interesting how in America, that's most singers in America's first experience on the stage is going to be musicals, right?
Yeah.
I think almost all of the American singers I've had on this show were all bitten by the bug through musical theater, and then they found out, a teacher said, "Man, that's a great voice," and they transitioned towards the opera stage. And once you sing a few of the opera arias, and you realize, oh, I can get to use my full instrument, and rest is history.
I really liked the challenge that opera presented musically. I was always just like, if someone told me that I couldn't do something, I always wanted to do it. It just made me want to do it more. So like the fact that opera was so
you were in the right place.
Yeah, it just kind of attracted me to it. I was like, well, I will make that happen and learn that. So I was very attracted to the challenge of it and of the music, and also the languages. I studied French in high school, and I really liked the languages. I thought that was pretty cool. So it won me over. It did. It took a while, though. At my first year at Manhattan School of Music, I very vividly remember kind of wrestling back and forth, like, do I really want to do this? Because, they started, even back then, your freshman year, they started telling you what the opera career was like. You're going to have to travel by yourself. It takes all this dedication. And I was like, I don't know if I love this enough to want to do that. And I also grew up in rural New Jersey, where in the woods, and I hadn't seen any parts of the world yet. New York City was enough of a shocker for me. So the Upper
Me too. I'm a suburbanite too. I'm from out in the suburbs in Rockland County, and nothing like New York. It's like,
and
wow.
When you're 18, and it's scary. But so I actually was thinking, because I was still playing the piano, I was thinking, I really love organ music. I had already taken a few organ lessons, and I had inherited a bunch of organ music from my great aunt, who passed away a few years after that. But she was actually the first female on the board of the American Guild of Organists.
Wow.
So I was just it was in my blood, and I was like, the organ's just so cool. I might want to just become an organ major. But then I was like, no, I'll just stick with the singing. And I was like, it's only 4 years. I'll stick it out and see what happens. But then by the time I hit my senior year, I completely fell in love with opera, and there was no looking back. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how careers change, and how you change and kind of grow into it. And what was your first operatic role?
It was actually in the name of the role was Jenny. The character was Jenny, and it was in Robert Ward's Roman Fever. And that was at Manhattan School of Music. Although prior to that, I did their scenes program. I was the only undergrad in their scenes program. It was for master students, but they cast me as Gretel in Hansel and Gretel, and I loved that. So
great show.
Yeah, but my first full role was in that Robert Ward, which is actually, there's a recording of it somewhere out there. It was commercially produced, so cool. It's kind of cool. I haven't listened to it probably in 20 years, but it's kind of cool to have an actual record of your very first operatic role in commercial recording. So that's
what happens when you go to a conservatory in New York, right? It puts you right in the big time, right around all of the
from the get-go.
One of the centers of the world in the music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sadly, not these days. Right now, it's we're waiting for the reemergence of all of that. But
yes, definitely.
So you finish up your undergraduate. Where did your career take you next?
So I decided to continue at Manhattan School of Music for my master's degree. And I guess it was at the end of my first year of my master's degree. Or was it the second year? No, it was actually at the end of my master's degree. It was, getting my years mixed up. I was then I got into my first and the only young artist program I ever did, which was Opera Theater of St. Louis. And I covered the role of Constanza. I covered Jennifer Welch Babbage. So back then I was singing as a coloratura. And so I was a young artist there for 2 seasons, and then I ended up at the Juilliard School for my artist diploma in the Juilliard Opera Center, and then that was a real challenge for me. It was a different environment than MSM. MSM was a little more laid back, and Juilliard was like, you know, I remember having lessons with my teacher there, Marlena Mallis, who I worked with there, and we were up in one of the studios on the 5th floor, and literally every lesson I had was overlooking the plaza at Lincoln Center with the Metropolitan Opera right there, no pressure or anything. So, she would always refer to it like, you sing like that, you'll end up there. You sing like that, you're not going there. So it was like a little intimidating.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
So anyway, and then I had a little success right after that. At the end of my time at Juilliard, when I was 26, that season I was a finalist in the George London competition, and I was a national semifinalist in the Met competition. So I got to see, that was the first time I got to sing on the Met stage. I didn't win either competition, but which kind of became a theme for my entire career. I was always the finalist and never the winner. And it finally came full circle literally 3 years ago. I won't say my current age and what age I was at that point, but let's just say it took a very, very long time, and it was well more than a decade and a half. And I finally won the Gerda Listener top prize, it was like...
And the Wagner division. I read that, but that's so cool.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, all right, I'm done. No more. I mean, I aged out of them all anyway, but I'm like, I'm done. We're ending on the high note. All those years of torment in those competitions, never getting anywhere with them, we're done. But anyway, so I got to sing. That was in 2004. In fact, there's a funny little video of all of us semifinalists that year. There was a documentary that was done on, like, I don't know, it was CBS or NBC or one of them, but it was on like one of those morning shows, and they showed, and it starts off with me standing, like, it's still on YouTube. It starts off with me, like, if you like look up 2004 Met Opera National Council auditions, it comes up, and it starts off literally with me singing. I sound like a chipmunk because I was so young, and I'm like standing center stage, like I was like, I'm standing center stage, and I was warming up. They had all of us on stage warming up, and so it's a funny, and oh my gosh, I can't even look at the clothes I was wearing or my hair, but it was a long time ago. So, but I didn't win. But what was great about it was, and I'm glad I didn't in retrospect, because I was not ready. Now knowing that I was going to end up a dramatic soprano, I had a long way to go vocally. But what it did do is establish a relationship with the Metropolitan Opera for me, which still exists today, now going on 17 years. So tell us, your first time stepping on the stage to sing in the Met, that competition, early competition, what did it feel like walking on the big stage? Well, I was extremely nervous. In fact, I was so nervous. I remember, like, an hour before my audition on the Met stage, I went to, like, this nail salon on the Upper West Side that I always went to, because there was this guy there who gave really good chair massages, and I was so, like, freaking out. I went and got a chair massage, which actually was not a good idea, because for me, I don't know, maybe some people can do it, but like getting a massage right before you're gonna sing, it makes you too relaxed. But anyway, I did that. But I don't remember a lot of it, but what I do remember is when I walked out on the stage. And what's interesting, having now performed there many times, when the house lights are out, it's a very different experience. But during that competition, the house lights were on. So I remember, honestly, being intimidated by how wide it was. It's such a wide opera house when you're on that stage. But when the lights are out, you know, years later when I made my Met debut and I actually got to sing on the stage for real, you know, in an actual production, when the lights are out, it actually strangely there's an intimacy that you feel. You don't feel like it's as big as it is, which is good because I psychologically it's very intimidating, like just seeing how big it is.
It is the largest, right? It's the in terms of opera houses, it is massive.
It really is, and it's like you don't even know what to do with your voice. You know, you're young and you've been practicing in like little school concert halls and practice rooms, and like suddenly you're like thrust onto this gigantic stage with I don't know how many I forget how many seats there are, 3,000.
Over 4,000.
Yeah, it's massive. So it was, and it's so steep as well. You know, when the family circle is just so far up.
I used to stand. When I was an undergraduate, I used to come to the opera almost every night when I was student teaching. I would teach, and then I would go back there standing room, and I would sneak forward and come closer and closer as the rich people left. Yes! I would go sneak down.
I did the same thing. I had a friend named Suzanne. We used to go there all the time, and we would like intermission. We would be like booking it down, and we'd be at the orchestra level, and then these people knew we'd stand there, and then they would just hand you their tickets. And actually, I had the most amazing thing. The very first opera I saw at the Metropolitan Opera was Le Nozze di Figaro. It was with Bryn Terfel, Dwayne Croft, Cecilia Bartoli, and Renee Fleming. And
dream team.
It was. And I had just done the opera as a chorister with the very, very old company that was in Princeton called Opera Festival of New Jersey. And this is like 21 years ago now, because I believe the year was 2000, or it might have been I think it was 98. This was a really long time ago. So anyway, we got orchestra front row center for the rest of the opera after the first act, and then we got backstage. You know, those were the days when you could just request to be let backstage, and you know, Cecilia Bartoli lets you back and visit her dressing room. So I have a photo with her, and yeah, it was really cool. So,
who are some of your idols as you were training into that early part of your career?
Well, I loved Bartoli. I mean, I think a lot.
It's hard not to love her. What a great artist.
I mean, she's so fun, and you know I had like I still do have like every single one of her CDs, and just the repertoire that she always sang, I enjoyed it, and so I of course loved her, and she was extremely popular like in the late 90s, early 2000s anyway. So like everybody in the music conservatory was like excited about her, and with good reason. But I also was an absolute fan, and still am, of Joan Sutherland. And I actually almost got to go to Switzerland to work with her.
Oh boy.
And Bonning. My teacher at the time was very good friends with them, and I had been begging her for years to please call them, because she would talk to them all the time. It's like, please, I really want to go. I want to learn from her. So finally she did. And they wrote back and they were like, yeah, you know, but literally I think it might have been that week even, is when Sutherland fell. And I think she broke her leg or hip or something. But then her health right after that went on its decline. And then she ended up, you know, obviously, unfortunately passing away. So I never got to go, but I still learned so much just from like watching her, you know, and listening to her. So I obviously love her. I also really loved Kirite Kanawa a lot when I was younger. As I became a more mature artist, I still love all of these singers, but I also came to know of Carol Van Ness, who I just think is, I mean, an incredible singer.
She was one of the first singers I saw live in an opera, and that was stunning artist. Yeah,
incredible. Yeah, I mean, she was so inspiring for for when I first sang Fiordalici, I mean, I just like watched her and listened to her constantly. So I love Carol Venice. And gosh, I mean, the list could go on for forever, but
It can.
yeah, those
So
are. I love.
you've done so much.
Also.
You've done all those competitions. You didn't spend a lot of time in the young artist programs. What I love is everyone's career path is so different and unique.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
unique.
Well, it was weird. I kind of was in limbo for a while. Luckily through the Met competition, I don't know if they still do this, but at that time, if you made it to the semifinal round, you were eligible to come back to the Met every year and sing for education grants. And it was kind of like how they would just keep tabs on you and see your progress and things. So I went back probably the year after. I think I got an encouragement award or an education grant, pardon me. And then it's 3 years after the competition, so it was 2007, I went and sang for them again. And I just can't remember what happened. So I went and it was good. I thought it was good at the time. And I drove home. And a day or two later, I was on my computer and I just so happened to look in my junk mail folder, which I never did. And I ever since this happened, I do. And lo and behold, there was an email from Lenore Rosenberg, who was, I mean, she's the person responsible for getting me to the Met. I owe her so much. And she was like, we'd like to come hear you for a house audition. So that was in my junk mail folder. So then I ended up going for a house audition, and by the time I got home, they had hired me to cover for my first season their Queen of the Night, which I had been singing. I sang it with New York City Opera and a couple of other places. So, and so that is how I eventually started at the Met. However, it took another 7 years to actually make my debut there. So 7 years and a Fach change, kind of like 1.5 Fach changes actually, because I was almost starting into the dramatic soprano repertoire in 2014 when I made my debut. So, but not quite yet. But and then I sang First Lady. So I did that Julie Taymor production at the Met. Whew. I don't even know how many performances there I either covered or sang. Well, I know I've sung, I believe, 16 performances of it, but
wow.
Covered, oh my goodness. It's got to be at least over 50 of them there, at least. I think I tried counting once and I just couldn't remember. So
a lot of my friends who I've had on the show who've been there multiple times, like after it gets to a certain amount, you get so used to being there. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I just know that Julie Taymor production, which they're no longer doing now.
Oh, well, they cycled that one out, really?
I think I heard they still might resurrect the English version, which is the reduced version, but they have officially retired the German. Yeah. I've done both. So the English was kind of fun because it was like 90 minutes and you were out, but...
So take us through your debut. You know you're going on the stage. I've had a few people who were covering and went on, and that launched them that way. But you know you're going on the stage at the Metropolitan Opera. You've worked your whole life for this. You've dug in. What was it like? Take us back in your dressing room beforehand.
Yeah, it was surreal, honestly. And because, my whole career I've had to really always prove myself and work hard, like super hard. I think sometimes even harder than I even thought I would to achieve things. And so this was definitely a long time coming. I mean, I had already been associated with the Met. Well, if you count the competition, it was 10 years. This is 10 years after the competition. So, I had been around that place for a long time, dreaming of that moment. So, when I finally did it, it was interesting because a lot of the singers, especially for a lot of the productions that are in the repertory there, you know, a lot of people come back, they've done the production before. So, which
Sure.
eventually happened with me, but when it's the first time you're doing it,
Gotta break
and
in.
especially with the Julie Taymor, it was so choreographed. It was like left foot here, right foot here, right arm here, right, you know, run here, run there, look this way while the hand's going that way, because we have those puppet heads, you know, on the hand, and it was crazy. So it was very nerve wracking. I remember being in my dressing room. I wasn't worried about the singing. I was worried that I was gonna like step the wrong way, be on the left foot instead of the right foot. But it was actually like that production. Um, it actually was a safety issue if you were not in the right place or you were on the wrong foot, because of the way the set was designed and the costumes and how literally perfectly timed everything was. I mean, yeah. And so I remember actually stepping on stage for the first dress rehearsal, and they hadn't told us. The other girls knew because they had done the production before, but I didn't know that in the stage the set was gonna move.
Oh, wow.
So I was standing there and I'm like singing the first, you know, line of the opera, and all of a sudden when the triomphe starts, the whole set just pushes forward, and I was like, whoa, what's happening? And I remember, I think one of the girls was like, it's supposed to happen. It's okay. Because it was so unexpected. It was like, you know.
They don't have that at many regional companies, right?
No, and it's impressive. You know, the stage crew, it's all moved by the stage crew. They literally lay on the floor behind the set, and they're in black, all black, and even like black, like stocking, like things over their heads. And they're literally pushing it on the floor. You know, this is not high tech in that respect. It was all manually moved. And yeah, so it was crazy. But then opening night, you know, I think it's honestly, it's a blur, but I do remember being extremely nervous. I think it was also a serious I think it was a broadcast. I think my actual debut, I did several Sirius XM broadcasts. I think my actual debut was a broadcast also. So that made it a little extra. It actually was, because I remember I had somebody record it on their computer for me. So that made it a little extra nerve wracking because it was going to be live over the radio.
To the world, yep.
Yeah. But I think the coolest part is like when you're bowing at the end and you realize like all the great artists that have been on that stage before you, and just like what an honor and a privilege it is, you know. And it's something that no matter what happens in my life, that no one can ever take away from me, the fact that I had that experience. And I obviously I hope I'll get to work there more. I'm hopeful I will.
It's coming. You've worked so hard, and your voice has grown so much, and you're tackling the biggest repertoire in the field. I saw you were doing Turandot, or were supposed to do Turandot, and it's coming again. I hope soon.
It's been postponed 5 times. In fact, it's the whole production. I was originally supposed to sing opposite the late Marcello Giordani, and he passed away, as you know. And I was so sad to hear about that. And then COVID happened, and it got rescheduled like 4 more times. And yeah, so it's all in all, I believe it's been 5 times now, if I counted correctly, that it's been rescheduled. But I'm feeling positive that it is going to happen. It's rescheduled for next April 2022. So and that's with Opera Grand Rapids. So and it's a great cast,
great company,
and
they do really great singers and really great casts out there. I always really work hard at that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to working with Maestro Mina, and yeah, I think it's gonna be really great and a great place to debut the role. So yeah.
So what's it like putting new roles into your repertoire as you grow into the hardest, most difficult roles in the entire repertoire, the biggest of the baddest roles? What's it like to approach a new role like that?
You know what's funny? Like, honestly, I am not trying to like sound, I don't know, but Turandot is so easy for me. I would rather sing that than like a Mozart opera any day.
When it's
No, I
all the great
love
conductors have told
Mozart.
me, when it's right for you, it just makes sense, right? It just
Yes,
makes
it
sense.
really does. It's so easy. I have such an easy time just like standing there and letting all these notes in my passaggio and higher just like plow out. But I will say that all of my work, my career's primarily been in Mozart. In Giovanni and Magic Flute are the two operas I've done the most of my career to this date. So all of that Mozart is what prepared me, I think, for this big repertoire. But I will say that it just really feels right and feels super easy. So I'm really excited about it. My voice likes to sit. I think all of the coloratorial training I had, I think I just have always I've always had an easy top to my voice. So I didn't lose it except for my high F, which I don't need that.
You don't need that when you're doing Turandot these days.
But I still have up to a high E flat on a really good day. D all the time, E flat if I'm really, really warmed up. But it's just my voice likes to live up there. So it's kind of Turandot is kind of the perfect role for me. I never expected it though. I have to tell you, I never expected that I would ever end up in this repertoire.
Well, your story is such a great story we have a lot of young people listen to the program, and for a young person coming up in this field who's got ambitions on the stage, boy, what a great lesson is to believe in yourself, work hard, be a good colleague, and you were like the embodiment of that.
Thank you. I try. I mean, I think also it's just like I just love it. I love the music. I love the work. I don't consider it work, I mean, it is work, but it's good work. It's good stress. It's good. It's fun.
To work, I'm the same as you. To get to work in the arts, to be a conductor and to be a teacher is just about them. I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. And I love to study at 3 a.m. and dig through scores. That's my favorite time in the world, is to study and make a discovery in a score. The whole days of working and studying, and then get to do it in front of an audience. The audience part for me is the tip of the iceberg. So that's the part that's above the water. The underneath the iceberg, all the work that we put in to get there.
Yes. Similar. First of all, I'm a night owl, so I love
me too.
It's like my brain just can't process things before 10 p.m. music-wise. It can process other things, but not music. So I guess that's when I get my memorizing done and a lot of my nitty-gritty work, but my character work, well, that kind of thing. But the things I actually really love most about singing, other than performing, I love performing, but I love the process. I am completely obsessed with analyzing vocal technique. And that's the teacher in me also. But I also love the dramatic aspect. I love getting into the character and like the psychology of the character and the who, what, when, where, why is this kid, what are the motivations, and like how can, not just taking things at face value, but maybe finding different and new ways to do things that maybe haven't been done before. I love that. And I love the research too. I love just like going and like finding books about, for instance, I actually never sang La Traviata, but I did learn a lot of Violetta when I thought I was going a lot of different directions
along the way, right?
Yeah, along the way I thought, I should learn this, I'll sing it. And I remember there's a book, Memoirs of a Courtesan in, I think, 19th century Paris or something. It's something along those lines, and it was so fascinating. So I love like just learning about similar types of characters in the time, the era in which they lived. And it
is fascinating. I tell my conducting students, you have to know it. Music's like an amber that captures everything going on around it in society. So you got to know what was going on in those periods. You got to know what the background story of the opera. Knowing Traviata, that story was based off a real person, makes it very different.
Completely. Yeah. And they're real people, like it's not just some fantasy world. I mean, all of these stories of these great operas are still relatable today, And
maybe it gives your characterization depth, right? When you know what's these people.
Yeah. I was going to say maybe except for a few parts of the Magic Flute, but I don't see bird people running around, but anyway,
That's the
but
fantasy part of that.
Motivations, the basic, like the love and the unrequited love, and there's things you can find even in crazy stories like that. So it's really one of my favorite things, and I think that goes back to like just the theater kid in me, like growing up in the theater. I loved it. Was like playtime,
Still is.
Yeah, totally.
Just a lot more people to play with.
Yes, for sure.
So we have a shout out to Howard J. Smith, the author, is on here. He's written some wonderful books, especially of Meeting Mozart was one of them, and one on Beethoven. Just a brilliant author. So welcome, Howard. Hope you're well.
Awesome. I think I probably have some of those books.
Great author.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for joining.
So tell us about why is opera so enduring? Like, what is it that, invented in 1600, why are we still going to the opera today? And what can it teach us about tomorrow?
It's a great question. I mean, going along with what we were just talking about, the stories, they're timeless. Society has evolved, but when it comes down to it, humans are humans, and the same emotions that somebody felt, 300, 400 years ago or felt today, some of the context may be slightly different, but the humans haven't changed in terms of how they relate to each other and their basic feelings and wants and needs. So that's all a timeless aspect. And of course the music, it's just, I don't know why, but I've been on an Aerosmith kick lately. I've been listening to a lot of Aerosmith. I know. And I used to listen to Aerosmith a lot when I was like in high school. And so I just kind of got more into their music again lately. And they're not obviously a heavy metal band or anything, but there's something very operatic about their music. Like it's
exciting, it's visceral, it drives, the energy's great.
Kind of like, it's like some of it's just like gut wrenching, like you can just feel it from here. And opera's like that, that it's a heightened emotion. It's a heightened experience. And, I spent a great deal of time during the pandemic thinking a lot about, what we can do to get American audiences more interested in it. And I think it would be a really good idea, honestly, because when opera, I've done a lot of history on how opera came to the U.S. because I had this realization a couple of years ago. I have a whole lecture on this that I've presented numerous places on the birth of opera in the United States and specifically Italian opera, but how it got its start here. It's not something that's really discussed much in music schools, and it's interesting how, like, prior to 1825, when Italian opera came to New York and there was the first season of Italian opera, really all that existed were these British comic operas and these kind of mishmash evenings, like pastiche kind of.
I love the pastiche, right?
Yeah, they would like just mix and match, little bit of this, a little bit of that, throw it all together. And then what I found out, which is really interesting, is that composers like Henry Bishop, they took stories like operas, like Don Giovanni, for instance, and took some of the greatest hits from the opera and then created a libretto in English and wrote and filled out all the rest of the parts of the story with their own music and presented that to American audiences. And that's how they kind of introduced a lot of the stories, like Giovanni and like Barber of Seville, to American audiences. So what's interesting is that then when opera came here, Italian opera, and they saw these operas in Italian, the reaction, what I read, is that a lot of the American audiences were like, it's not in English. So this got me thinking that I think that heavily is still possibly influencing things today. And I think it might be interesting to go back and look at that history and think, well, how could we maybe, I'm not saying that composers today would want to like write their own versions of these stories and, insert their own music like Bishop did with Giovanni and Mozart's music, but maybe there might be ways to create some relatively melodic modern day versions of some of these stories, at least to introduce the stories to the people in maybe in schools, maybe just go to schools and like, here's a 30-minute version of the story of the magic flute with this modern composer who's composed it, and it's all in English. And I don't know. And then as a way to introduce a lot of the great stories, I mean, Mozart's probably more relatable to young kids, so maybe it would be like more of like a, a more complex opera, like a Strauss opera or something. But
Yeah, I always find that it's amazing how with kids is like they don't really know what opera is. When it's like if they love musicals. I think everyone loves the musicals. But this opera they think is this being totally different thing. I'm like, it's really not.
No, and the thing is, I mean, musical theater, the reason why I really think, I mean, number one, it's in English, Number two, it is an American art form. It was created here, and it's a very American thing. So, opera is a European art form, but I'm just wondering if there might be a way to get more audiences, get younger people more interested, if we were to possibly somehow create these little mini performances and introduce some of the stories to the young people or to just the general masses, and then be like, hey, well, you really like this story, why don't you come see Puccini's version of it, the real one here, and then they'd be more inclined to come. It wouldn't feel as intimidating. I don't know. I'm just speculating. It's something I've been thinking about a lot.
Well, it's important because we have to. The opera audience, tends to skew much older. I mean, I've gone to the opera for many years, and as running an opera company, it was an older audience, and it's so important that we cultivate the next generation of patrons and supporters and people who love this. And it's such, someone like yourself is a great advocate for that because you realize how important it can be and how much it can affect people. And these universal human stories never get old.
No, they really don't. And I think if people can just get their feet wet in it, they'd probably realize, oh, this is actually really cool, and it wouldn't feel as intimidating. They would be like, oh, it's in Italian or it's in German. I don't know that language. I mean, I think that's one of the really great things that Opera Theater of St. Louis, where I got my start, actually does. They do everything in English, and I think it's a really, of course, who doesn't want Tosca in Italian, but I think it's
Vittoria. I know. What's the vowel in that word? What are they going to use for that? Victory.
I was in the chorus of Tosca at Opera Theater of St. Louis, and Cynthia Lawrence sang it in English there. One of the three sopranos. But so I think it's that's a good thing, and I think maybe more companies might want to think of doing it.
We've had a real challenge. The regional companies have been under such incredible financial challenges since 2009. I know personally I went through a lot of that. And now with COVID, it's going to be a very different landscape coming out of COVID, I think, for all of us. I think the industry is going to have to, I think the whole nation has to come to terms with what it's going to look like, but the arts especially.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. There are a lot of new companies, little indie companies that have popped up I've seen that are run by a lot of the young people in their 20s, and I give them a lot of credit. They're very ambitious and they want to make things happen, and they're go-getters, and I think that's great. But I think that should continue. But I also think that we have to honor the larger voices and the mature voices. And I think what's been one of the sad things I've noticed in the pandemic is a lot of my colleagues who are maybe 10, 20 years older than me, towards the end of their careers, but still, like, they were singing.
Great voices. Yep, I know. I know, I've worked with a lot of them, and it's heartbreaking to see. That a couple of them have told me candidly off the air that this is probably the end for them, and it's so sad. We've lost instrumentalists. We've lost some real great talent. Yeah,
I can personally, I know a few who just have called it quits. They're like, this is too much. So it's sad. It's sad because, especially as a young singer, I think it's important for young singers to work with older singers. You know, we all have to work together.
In this business, that knowledge
learn.
is so important.
Yeah, we can all learn from each other. I mean, not only obviously can they learn the craft from and by watching the older singers, the people who've been around doing this for forever, but we can also learn from them. They have a lot of energy. They have they're innovative. They have a lot of ideas. You know, and it's just I hope that there's a way for some of the really, you know, the older performers who, you know, a lot of the regulars who were like full time at the Met, for instance. I really hope that there's a way that they can still, a lot of them can still continue, because they're really important to our industry.
I've learned so much from the elder statesmen I've worked with in the business. When I was young, especially, I was around some really great artists who were been there for 25 years at the Met. You're like, oh, the stories they had of the previous generation of artists blew my mind. It was just like the people that they, I just listened to on recordings. They knew them personally. It's totally different.
Yes, it's incredible. Yeah, you just learn so much just hearing the stories. Like, I mean, how cool is that to know someone who was like, oh yeah, when I was prompting, you know, for Pavarotti, or, you know, it's like, yeah, you don't get to hear that a lot.
I had Ron Naldi on the podcast. He was on for 2.5 hours. I think we had him, and he was talking about, like, you know, back in the dressing room with Domingo before he was about to go on stage to cover for him or this or that. And, you know, he was there when Domingo and Pavarotti both made their debuts the same season, and watching them back to back, night to night, and they would go after, you know, who had the better performance, and the energy in the opera house. He said it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
These stories, you had to have been there to appreciate it.
Literally. I mean, I feel fortunate in that, I mean, I'm not young, but I'm not old, and I'm in the prime of my singing, that I've been able to work with some of the great people there, in particular at the Met, but in other places too. So it's just so important to keep them around and to have them. They're just such a wealth of knowledge, you know?
And I'm so glad that you're teaching. Teaching has become an important part of your career.
Yes.
Then you've been around these greats, and now you can pass on some of that knowledge to the next generation. What has teaching done for your career, and how does it keep you energized?
Well, first of all, I just absolutely love it, but it's kept me singing really well. Which I mean, I've always been naturally talented, and I've had a natural instrument, but I have to be honest and say that I was never like a natural singer, in terms of like those people who just like seem to just like at 18 they're already like, it's like the technique is like, it's like, how were you born like that? Like, I had to figure everything out, and at times it was very frustrating, because the musicality has always been in me, but it was I make it look, you know, it's so easy for me now, and people are like, oh, I made it look easy. I'm like, yeah, you have no idea how long that took to figure out how to do that. but and it is.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
It is easy, but in retrospect, it took a long time to be able to make it feel that way, for it to be that way. But anyway, so
honestly, in my experience, those are the best teachers.
Well, and thank you. And that's kind of what I was getting at, is that because I had to figure everything out, I have an unruly tongue. My breath support was never, I had to always like work on it. I still have to work on it. My diaphragm is like, it's gotta like get a workout. It's like, it's gotta go to the gym, or it's, you know, it doesn't want to cooperate. So I've had to work all of this stuff out, and figure it out, and it's been, in retrospect, a big blessing, because I learned what I was doing. You know, I remember actually coming to a point right around age 30 when I realized I had gotten pretty far. I was already at the Met, but I was like, I actually don't know what I'm doing. Like, I actually don't, like, if I had to analyze it to somebody, I had no idea. So I was really lucky, because that was around the time that I met my current teacher, Diana Sorviero, who I've been with for well over a decade.
Shout out to Diana Sorviero, another great in the field.
Yeah, she's a genius of the voice. I mean, she just knows everything. I I credit her for getting me to where I am now, because I think I would have plateaued if I hadn't met her. She helped me figure out a large chunk of what I needed to figure out to be able to be singing the rep I'm singing and have it actually feel really easy. Uh, so yeah, I had to figure it out, and so yeah, I enjoy, and it's weirdly an obsession. Like, I actually really love listening to somebody and just kind of analyzing it and then figuring out what needs to happen. And it's very systematic in my brain. Like, I can immediately tell, like, this has to happen. We have to do this, and this, and then that'll fix that. And it's like, this is how my brain works. So I love it. I'm really obsessed with it, and I love talking about it. And it's super fun to me. And I love, like, with my students, you know, I think I'm a pretty big pain in the butt as a teacher, because I don't let them get away with anything. But I definitely, it just brings me no greater joy when I have a student who is willing to, like, be met with the challenge, and who works hard, and is like, and can find the joy in the process as well. Like, that, there's nothing more rewarding. And I have several students who are really, really into, like, the process. And it's so much fun. It makes lessons so much fun, because it's like this big discovery. It's like going on an archaeological dig, you know? So
Nothing like it. Nothing like that discovery and that joy, and it's like, I can do this.
yeah, and I love being able to help them express. I remember a very specific moment with Diana Soviero, actually, when it was kind of like a light bulb moment, when things just really clicked. That all this, I remember, because I started crying, and then she started crying. It was one of those moments. But she had me, like, on the floor. We were working on my breath support, and she had me, like, on the floor in this, like, twisted position, as she is notorious for having people do. And I remember that I was singing the Chardosh from Fledermaus. And I remember, like, doing one of the scales or something in the first part of the aria. And it just came out of me. It was like the music, the way that I always heard that it heard it in my head, and that I wanted to be able to do it. I was finally able to do it. And I feel like without her, I'm not so sure I would have been able, the innate musicality that I have, I'm not sure that my technique would have matched with that. But
it takes that guide, right? It takes that guide.
Yeah. And I just remember, like, crying, because I remember, like, feeling like, oh my gosh, like, I now have the tools to express what's always been in me that I couldn't really completely express up until this point. And this was literally, like, probably after, like, 14 years of serious vocal training and 3 degrees, you know? So this took a long time, and it was an amazing moment. And so I love when I have moments like that with my students. It's so exciting, because I know what it feels like, and I know what they're feeling like when they're able to do it, you know? And it's just like, it's so emotional, and, like, yeah, I'm very emotional and a mush bag, but I love it.
And it's so wonderful, because you're passing along your passion and your love. They feed off that. I know that energy is kind of contagious. Mm-hmm. Your energy is very contagious.
Thank you. I just, you know, it just comes from loving what I do, you know.
That radiates in every word you say. So tell us, the COVID period hits. Obviously, luckily, you're still teaching, and you're very busy with your teaching. What's it been like as a performer when your primary means of identification is suddenly silent?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it was extremely difficult. 2020 was probably one of the worst years of my life emotionally. I mean, really and truly. and I'm only honestly now processing it. Because I think
It's shock, right? It's shock.
yeah, well,
It's depression. We're all there.
I was talking to my therapist about this. I was like, and she made a really valid point. She's like, honestly, we were all in survival mode last year. It was like, let's just get to the next day. We didn't even have time to process what was happening. And I was like, that's so true. Like now, as things are slowly coming back to some sort of normal, we're all able to kind of think like, gosh, what the heck happened last year, you know? So I'm only starting to come to terms with it. But yeah, it was really devastating. I mean, my career literally, it was proving to be probably the best year of one of the best years of my career so far. I mean, it started off with a really amazing performance I did with a couple of performances of Pacini's Maria Regina d'Inghilterra with Odyssey Opera in Boston. And the reviews came in, and I was really happy with what I did there. And
they were stunning. You're being modest. I read them. They were stunning.
Oh, thank you. It was a very hard opera. Very hard. That was probably one of the hardest roles I've ever sung because of the way it was written. It started off high and ended really low.
That's an odd change of pace.
Like you're like really warmed up. The final act was like really, really low. I'm talking like middle C to like C4 to C5. I mean, like in that area. Like it was like really weird. So it was very vocally demanding. But so I had just come off of that. I had gone to China. I was teaching in China. I was then teaching in Mexico, and then I have a nonprofit in Hawaii, and that's where I was. We were doing our fourth festival. It was our third or fourth, I can't remember. Festival, 16, 17, it was our fourth annual festival. And I was in the Hawaiian Islands, and right before I left for Hawaii is when it was like, this isn't looking good, but we went ahead with the festival. And then, the day I came back was the day that New York City shut down. And then it was just like this trickling, rolling onslaught of cancellations. You know, it was just like, I was holding on to like even little things. Like I had a Beethoven 9 with the Erie Philharmonic, and I was like, at least the Beethoven 9 is still happening. And then I remember the day that got canceled. I was like that
dominoes.
That was the last thing I was holding on to. And then it was like, oh my God, like this is so it was really, really devastating. And, you know, I'm sure all of us dealt with it in bizarre, weird ways. And I did
yard work for about 5 weeks. My yard's never been as clean as it is right now.
I should have channeled into cleaning my house. That would have been a good productive thing, but that didn't happen actually. But anyway, I think I just, for me, just the psychological aspect of it was too overwhelming that I kind of felt a little bit stuck for quite some time. I mean, luckily I was still teaching throughout all of it, and that kept me going. But I ended up just taking a few little day trips or weekend trips by myself to like the Jersey Shore. I was like, because, you know, when you're so used to traveling and just to have that completely stop, it was really, really like, I missed the adventure. I missed the, you know, just going somewhere and like trying a new restaurant or sleeping in a different bed, you know? So I created some of my own little trips, and then I think it's only been in more recent months that I actually feel that the way that I've been dealing with it has been actually quite healthy and productive, because I've been going into nature. In the fall, I started going on nature walks, and I think I just gave away that I'm from New Jersey when I said that.
Could be Connecticut, could be upstate New York.
So anyway, and then even more recently, I just started like, I just go to the woods and I just stand there and I look around and I observe things. And I take pictures. I've been like taking a lot of pictures of water reflections. I've put a couple of them up on my Instagram. I mean, it's just been a real nice outlet for me. Like it gets me focused on something and gets me out of my own head. So it's been really cool. And I've kind of picked up, I never expected this. My aunt, who's a nature photographer, is extremely happy. But I actually enjoy photography. I mean, I'm using my iPhone, so I really know nothing about photography, but I'm enjoying taking photos and at least I'm trying to find art in nature, and I've kind of developed a little bit of a technique where I'm looking for water reflections, but more specifically, when I'm looking at them, I'm thinking, would that look really cool upside down? So I'm taking pictures and flipping them upside down and finding like the coolest things. Like you could just like take a photo of like a boring lake, right? And then it's like, okay, that's just like a branch that fell in the water. And then you flip it around and it looks like the branch looks like a storm that's approaching, and you can see the reflection of the trees. And anyway, so it's been like a really cool thing, and that's been like a really
So you're expanding your artistry in ways you never thought. I'm amazed by how people have been trying such interesting things. I mean, all of us were thrown into this together, and it's like, I'm amazed by how creative the creative community is.
Right. I know several colleagues who have like, in fact, one the other day, she's a little younger than me, but she posted this incredible painting. It was like just a what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of modern art, kind of expressionistic kind of painting. And she said, "Here it is, my first painting, and it's incredible." And I was like, girl, that's really amazing. Like, I would buy that.
You go. Wow.
So
I can't do a stick figure.
Yeah, it's really cool. Oh, yeah. I tried painting once. I won't tell you that story. It's kind of funny, but the painting is still up in my attic, and it's really bad. But anyway, it was supposed to be, I'll tell you the story. What the heck?
Go for it.
Years ago, I got this creative idea. I went to the MoMA, and I always get inspired when I go to the MoMA. So I thought it would be really cool if like people could like paint voices, like you're listening to a voice and just like paint what you hear. I always have the ideas, but then like trying to like do it. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to buy a canvas and an easel and some paint. This was like over 10 years ago. And I'm just going to listen to Pavarotti, and I'm just going to like see what happens. And it just turned into this really hideous palm tree. And I was like, yeah, I'm not a painter, but the creativity is there. And I find that I'm able to find it by taking photographs, actually. So
that's beautiful.
Cool.
Photography is amazing. I watch a great photographer and I look at some of the images and I'm like, man, they work on the exposure. There's so much there.
Yeah.
And I'm like you. I love the arts. I love all the arts. And I teach my undergrads. I always talk about like how all the arts are related, and you could find this creativity, and there's always it's amazing how people have been changing and learning in new ways. Have you been doing online performances?
Yes. So, I mean, luckily I've had a few of those. Maryland Opera has brought me in to do several concerts when the weather was better. Last year we did a few outdoor performances, and then back in February, Valentine's weekend, they brought me to do a live stream performance. And then this month has actually been pretty busy because I filmed last weekend a Foray Requiem that will, with the New Choral Society. They're a very top-notch group up in Scarsdale, New York. Well, I guess from where you are, it's down in Scarsdale, New York. But anyway, that is actually premiering tomorrow night. And I also just did a recording 2 weeks ago for the Wagner Society of New York of some Debussy that's going to be aired soon. It's being paired with a lecture on like I want to say impressionist painting. I think that's what they told me. But anyway, paintings. Yeah, so it's been nice to have a few things here or there.
We all know it's not the same thing, but it's certainly a step in the right direction, right? We're getting towards that.
It is. I mean, having a larger instrument, my voice doesn't necessarily sound, you don't get the full effect on a recording. It's just impossible.
Gotta be in the concert hall to feel the decibels.
Yeah, and it's interesting. My co-founder of my festival in Hawaii, he's a violinist. He's an incredible violinist. We do a lot of smaller venue concerts there because he's a violinist. But anyway, a couple of them we did, and he was like, "Your voice is just like too overwhelming for these spaces." And I remember,
thank you.
He made a comment. Yeah, he made a comment to me once. We were doing a performance at Pearl Harbor in a big church there, and a chapel, but it's a big space. And he was like, what's interesting, because he was standing, as I was rehearsing, he was standing in various parts of the hall, and he's like, your voice actually like unravels as it goes out. He's like, the further out, it's like a totally different experience. And so that, for big voices, that's really important. The online stuff is great, especially if you have a smaller instrument, but for a bigger voice, it's really an acoustical thing. You have to experience it live. It's not meant to be compressed through all this technology. So, like you said, it's a step in the right direction. It's what we have right now, but I am very hopeful that we will be back in the big theaters very soon.
Yeah, all our fingers are crossed that voices like yours will be on the major stages again when it's safe to be so. I think in the fall, it looks now, fingers crossed, that we may see some performances start to unravel, maybe reveal themselves. And we have those opportunities again. I think we're going to start with like probably smaller audiences, but I know I'm involved in a bunch of conducting this summer, and we'll see. Hopefully, fingers crossed that that's going to happen, and we'll all be involved in this experiment together. What is something that COVID has taught you that you're going to take with you on the next chapter?
Oh, it's taught me a lot, actually. It's taught me, first of all, I think like a lot of Americans, we tend to be workaholics, and often at the expense of ignoring our own inner world. And I think there's we can learn a lot, especially from Europeans. You have their, the Italians and their afternoon pausa and things like that. I mean, not gonna lie, like going from the extreme of fast paced to absolutely nothing was like shocking, but I would like to incorporate more downtime in going forward. I don't want, even though my schedule's picking up, and like I was telling you before we went on the air, I'm actually going to Europe in a couple of weeks for something
spectacular news
that will be revealed sooner than later. But things are starting to pick up again, but I don't want to just go back to the way I was and not taking, I mean, it sounds cliche, but I want to take more time to smell the roses, to be still and to appreciate things, and to take time to sometimes just process things and not necessarily use my work as a coping mechanism for things, which I think a lot tend to do. I want to be able to make time. You have to make the time. You can't, it's otherwise, it will never happen, but make the time to keep working on myself more, thinking about what I want in life, and not just living this fast-paced life where I don't stop to think. Nurturing relationships more with family and things. It's become more of a priority to me than I think it was beforehand, and I really think I only would have come to that realization through this experience. I'm not so sure that I would have maybe I eventually would have, but I think I probably would have crashed and burned, at the expense of my health and everything else, just with how much, because I am a very big go-getter, and I want to do things, but I think there's a balance, and I think this helped me find a little bit of that balance within myself.
That's an important thing, and that'll pay off dividends down the road when life picks up and you're back on the big stages and traveling around the world and doing what you do best.
Yeah, for sure.
Amy, how can people find out more about you, and how can they, where can they go to see what's next?
My website is www.amyshoremount-obra.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm pretty big on Instagram and TikTok, actually. My Instagram is
going for those younger fans.
That's a new one. I have a small, just over 1,000 people following on TikTok. That's like nothing on TikTok, but it's been a really cool place for me to I just produce videos on vocal technique. It's all about singing. All my videos are about technique, and I have a fun little group of singers I've met there. They're all mostly in their 20s, but a lot of them are teachers, and some of them are students, and they've been great, and I've enjoyed interacting with them. And like I just did a portamento contest recently, and I had 3 winners, so I sent them all Marchesi bel canto books, and it's been fun.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I love it. I love TikTok. And Instagram is more for like my career, and apparently now my nature photography, because I'm putting that up there.
Very cool.
Never thought I would be putting that there, but
check it out, folks. A multi-talented artist.
Thanks. Yeah, so those would be the places primarily where I am reachable.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and continued success. I can't wait to see you on the stage again. Hope we get to work together down the road.
Yeah, I would love that. And thanks so much for having me. It's been a great conversation.
Well, so thank you for your honesty, your candor, and your passion for what you do is going to be so wonderful as you come back to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jason. All right, well, take care.
Have a great night. Thank you for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. We have 2 shows coming up this weekend. We're taking it easy. We had 6 last weekend. This weekend is only 2. We have pop singer Tammy, who was #1 in the Billboard charts in 2017 for her song Sugar Shack. And she's also been on the charts in other areas as well. She's going to be calling in from Thailand, which is awesome, our first guest from Thailand. And we have Christiane Knoll, a two-time, Tony Award nominee, and she'll be a famous Broadway singer. She'll be on Sunday. So check us out. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, keep music alive.